If it's a cheerful, expectant attitude, it says to everyone with whom we come in contact that we expect the best in our dealings with our world. You see, we tend to live up to our expectations, and others give to us, as far as their attitudes are concerned, what we expect. Our attitude is something we can control. We can establish our attitude each morning when we start our day. In fact, we do just that, whether or not we realize it. And the people in our family, all the people in our world, will reflect back to us the attitude we present to them. You and I are responsible for our lives. You and I produce causes all day long, every day of our lives. The environment can return to us only a corresponding effect. That's why I say that each of us determines the quality of his or her own life. We get back what we put out. Here's a way to evaluate the quality of your attitude in the past. Would you say that people tend to react to you in a smiling, positive manner, giving you friendly greetings when you appear? Your answer to that question will tell the story. I remember the time when a man and his wife bought a home across the street from me in Florida. The couple had moved to Florida from their home in Minnesota. They had planned the move for years. They were tired of the northern winters, and he was an avid fisherman. Several months passed, and one day, I was surprised to see them packing. I walked across the street and asked the man if they were leaving so soon after they had made the move. He nodded. "My wife hates it here," he said. "We're going back home." I asked him how in the world his wife could hate it here, what she didn't like about the place. After a few questions, the truth came out. "She hasn't been accepted here," he said. "The other women of the community have left her strictly alone. She hasn't made any friends. She hasn't been asked to participate in any of the community activities. Has she let the other women know she's interested in participating in community activities?" I asked him. He stopped what he was doing and looked at me. "No," he said. "No, she hasn't. She's been waiting for the women to ask her. And since she stayed in the house, waiting for them to come to her, they've thought of her as a recluse, as a person who's not interested in making friends. So they've left her alone." There was a long silence, and then he began nodding. "Yes, that's exactly what's happened," he said. "Yes, the women of the neighborhood should have come to her and introduced themselves, or invited her to a tea or luncheon, but they were reacting to her. She didn't know that the community could give her back only a reflection of her own attitude." Here was a woman in her 60s who had never learned the first important rule for successful living: that our surroundings will always reflect us, that our environment is a mirror, often a merciless mirror, of ourselves. As soon as a person begins to change, his or her surroundings will change. And it works like this: great attitude, great results; good attitude, good results; fair or average attitude, fair or average results; poor attitude, poor results. So each of us shapes his or her own life. And to an altogether unexpected extent, the shape and texture and the quality or lack of quality of our lives is determined by our habitual attitude. It sounds simple, doesn't it? But it's not quite that easy. For most of us, learning this new habit takes time. But once it becomes a habit-knit part of our lives, our world will change as dramatically as it would if we were walking from a dark cave into the bright light of day. Most people never think about their attitudes at all. For most of them, it's a matter of beginning each day in neutral. Their attitudes are neither good nor bad. They are poised to react to whatever stimuli they encounter. If the stimulus is good, they will reflect it. If it's bad, they will reflect that too. They are chameleons, going through their days reacting to whatever confronts them. And these are the people of our environment. That's why it's so important for us to control our attitudes, to make sure they're excellent or good. A person with a poor attitude toward learning, for example, isn't going to learn very much. I know you can think of examples of this in your own life. Or if we take the attitude that we can't do something, we generally will not do it. With an attitude of failure, we're whipped before we start. It was William James of Harvard University, the father of psychology in America, who said, "Human beings can alter their lives by altering their attitudes of mind." In trying to describe the attitude that has worked so well for me over the years, I found myself using two important words: gratitude and expectant. First, I'm grateful for the opportunity to live on this beautiful and astonishing planet Earth. In the morning, I wake up with a sense of gratitude. Second, I expect the best. I expect to reach the goals I establish for myself. We'll talk a good deal more about this concept later in the program. I find the idea of fulfilling those goals agreeable. Hence, the attitude of expectancy. I know the world will give me back what I put out in the way of attitude, so it's up to me. I'm responsible. There are millions of human beings who live narrow, darkened, frustrated lives, who live defensively, simply because they take a defensive, doubtful attitude toward themselves and, as a result, toward life in general. A person with a poor attitude becomes a magnet for unpleasant experiences. Our outlook on life is a kind of paintbrush, and with it, we paint our world. It can be bright and filled with hope and satisfaction, or it can be dark and gloomy, lugubrious. Sometimes, it's hard to convince people that the world they experience is a reflection of their attitude. They take the attitude that if only people would be nice to them, they would be nice in return. They're like the person sitting in front of the cold stove waiting for the heat. Until he puts in the fuel, there won't be any heat. It's up to him to act first. It has to start somewhere. Let it begin with us. Attitude is the reflection of the person inside. Consider for a moment the people who go sailing through life, from one success to another, and who, when they occasionally fail at something, shrug it off and head right out again. No matter what people do, wherever you find people doing an outstanding job and getting outstanding results, you'll find people with a good attitude. These people take the attitude that they can accomplish what they set out to accomplish. They take the attitude that achievement is the natural order of things, and it is. They take the attitude that there's no good reason on earth why they can't be as successful, as competent, as anyone else. They have a healthy attitude toward life and the things they want to accomplish. Because of that, they can accomplish some remarkable things. Others may call them successful, outstanding, brilliant, lucky, and so on. Quite frequently, they are no smarter or more talented than most other people, but they have the right attitude. They find their accomplishments not too difficult simply because it seems so few others are really trying or really believe in themselves. As to luck, forget it. Luck is what happens when preparedness meets opportunity, and opportunity is there all the time. A person can be very efficient at his or her work, but if the corresponding excellent attitude isn't present, the person is a failure. A robot can do a great job, but only a human being can ennoble work with a great attitude and, by so doing, touch it with the magic of humanness. Make it come alive and sing. Make it truly worthwhile. That, my friend, makes the difference. Successful people come in all sizes, shapes, ages, and colors, and they have widely varying degrees of intelligence and education. But they have one thing in common. They expect more good out of life than bad. They expect success more often than failure. And they do succeed. There are things you want, worthwhile things. Take the attitude that there are a lot more reasons why you can reach those goals than fail in the attempt. Go after them, work at it, keep your attitude positive, cheerful, and expectant, and you'll get them. And as you do, you'll grow to reach new plateaus and be able to accomplish still more. Remember this. Our environment, the world in which we live and work, is a mirror of our attitudes and expectations. If we feel that our environment could stand some improvement, we can bring about that change for the better by improving our attitude. The world plays no favorites. It's impersonal. It doesn't care who succeeds or who fails, nor does it care if we change. Our attitude toward life doesn't affect the world and the people in it nearly as much as it affects us. It would be impossible to even estimate the number of jobs that have been lost, promotions or good grades missed, sales lost, or marriages ruined by poor attitudes. But you can number in the millions the jobs that are held but hated, the marriages that are tolerated but unhappy, the parents and children who fail to understand and love one another. All because of people who are waiting for the world and others to change them. They don't understand that what they're getting is a reflection of themselves. Nothing can change until we do. When we change, our worlds will change. The answer is attitude. How does one develop a good attitude? The same way one develops any other ability. Through practice. It's a good idea to stick on the bathroom mirror a small sign on which is printed the word attitude. That way, you'll see it first thing every morning. You might have another sign in your car and one at your place of work. We need to smile more, speak to people, go out to people. Everything in the world we want to do or get done, we must do with and through people. Every dollar we will ever earn must come from people. The person we love, and with whom we want to spend the rest of our life, is a human being with whom we must interact. Our children are individuals, each different from any other person who ever lived. And what affects them most is our attitude, the loving kindness they see and feel whenever we are around them. If you'll begin to develop and maintain an attitude that says yes to life and the world, you'll be astonished at the changes you'll see. Someone once said, "Life is dull only to dull people." It's true, of course. It's true also that life is interesting only to interesting people, and that life is successful only for successful people. We must be the epitome, the embodiment of success. We must radiate success before it will come to us. We must first become mentally, from the attitude standpoint, the people we wish to become. Many years ago, a newspaper reporter asked a famous Los Angeles restaurateur, "When did you become successful?" He replied, "I was successful when I was dead broke. I knew what I wanted to do, and I knew I'd do it. It was only a matter of time." He had a successful attitude long before the success he sought had become a reality. The great German philosopher and writer, Goethe, put it this way: "Before you can do something, you must be something." But let me prove my point by giving you an exercise. If you will conscientiously go about the exercise I will outline and concentrate on it every day, you will find yourself becoming lucky, as the uninitiated call it. All sorts of wonderful things will begin happening in your life, and it will show you what a great attitude can mean. So here's the exercise. Treat every person with whom you come in contact as the most important person on earth. Do that for 3 excellent reasons. 1. As far as every person is concerned, he is the most important person on earth. 2. That is the way human beings ought to treat each other. And 3. By treating everyone this way, we begin to form an important habit. There's nothing in the world that men, women, and children want and need more than self-esteem. The feeling that they're important, that they're recognized, that they're needed, that they count and are respected. They will give their love, their respect, and their business to the person who fills this need. Have you ever noticed that the higher you go in any organization of value, the nicer the people seem to be? It works this way. The bigger the people, the easier it is to talk to them, get along with them, and work with them. So they naturally matriculate to the top. It's their attitude. The people with great attitudes just naturally gravitate to the top of whatever business or department they're in. They don't have great attitudes because of their positions. They have their positions largely because of their great attitudes. For the purposes of this exercise, act toward others in exactly the same manner that you want them to act toward you. Treat the members of your family as the very important people they are, the most important in the world. Each morning, carry out into the world the kind of attitude you'd have if you were the most successful person on earth. Notice how quickly it develops into a habit. Almost immediately, you'll notice a change. Irritations that used to frustrate you will begin to disappear. When some less informed person gives you a bad time, don't let his poor attitude infect yours. Keep yours in hand. Keep it good. Keep cool, above it all, and keep smiling. If you're driving and someone cuts in front of your car, or if someone is discourteous to you in any other manner, don't react as he would. Smile it off. Destructive emotions, such as anger, hatred, and jealousy don't hurt others. They hurt you. They can make your life miserable. They can make you sick. Forgive everyone who ever hurt you. Really forgive them. And then forgive yourself. And that great attitudes are not the result of success. Success is the result of great attitudes. Finally, the deepest craving of the human being is for recognition and self-esteem, to be needed, to feel important, to be recognized and appreciated. That includes our loved ones and everyone else with whom we come in contact during our days. To make these important principles a habit-knit part of your life, here are some suggestions. Since your mind can hold only one thought at a time, make each thought you hold constructive and positive. Look for the best in people and ideas. Be constantly alert for new ideas you can put to use in your life. Don't waste time talking about your problems with people who can't solve them, or about your health unless it's good or you're talking to your doctor. It won't help you. It can't help others. Radiate the attitude of well-being and confidence, the attitude of the person who knows where he or she is going. You'll find all sorts of good things happening to you. Lastly, treat everyone with whom you come in contact as the most important person on earth. Start this habit, practice it consistently, and you'll do it and benefit from it for the rest of your life. Acres of diamonds. In 1843, a man was born who was to have a profound effect upon the lives of millions of people. His name was Russell Herman Conwell. He became a lawyer, then a newspaper editor, and, finally, a clergyman. During his church career, an incident occurred that was to change his life and the lives of countless others. One day, a group of young people came to Dr. Conwell at his church and asked him if he would be willing to instruct them in college courses. They all wanted a college education but lacked the money to pay for it. He told them to let him think about it and to come back in a few days. After they left, an idea began to form in Dr. Conwell's mind. He asked himself, why couldn't there be a fine college for poor but deserving young people? Before very long, the idea consumed him. Why not, indeed? It was a project worthy of 100% dedication, complete commitment. Almost single-handedly, Dr. Conwell raised several $1 million with which he founded Temple University, today one of the country's leading schools. He raised the money by giving more than 6,000 lectures all over the country, and in each one of them, he told a story called Acres of Diamonds. It was a true story that had affected him very deeply, and it had the same effect on his audiences. The money he needed to build the college came pouring in. The story was the account of an African farmer who had heard tales about the other farmers who had made millions by discovering diamond mines. These tales so excited the farmer that he could hardly wait to sell his farm and go prospecting for diamonds himself. So he sold the farm and spent the rest of his life wandering the African continent, searching unsuccessfully for the gleaming gems that brought such high prices on the markets of the world. Finally, the story goes, worn out and in a fit of despondency, he threw himself into a river and drowned. Meanwhile, back at the ranch or farm, in this case, the man who had bought the farm happened to be crossing the small stream on the property. Suddenly, there was a bright flash of blue and red light from the stream's bottom. He bent down, picked up the stone. It was a good-sized stone, and, admiring it, later put it on his fireplace mantel as an interesting curiosity. Several weeks later, a visitor to his home picked up the stone, looked closely at it, hefted it in his hand, and nearly fainted. He asked the farmer if he knew what he'd found. When the farmer said no, that he'd thought it was a piece of crystal, the visitor told him he'd found one of the largest diamonds ever discovered. The farmer had trouble believing that. He told the man that his creek was full of such stones, not as large, perhaps, as the one on the mantel, but they were sprinkled generously throughout the creek bottom. Needless to say, the farm the first farmer had sold so that he might find a diamond mine turned out to be the most productive diamond mine on the entire African continent. The first farmer had owned, free and clear, acres of diamonds, but he had sold them for practically nothing in order to look for them elsewhere. The moral is clear. If only the first farmer had taken the time to study and prepare himself to learn what diamonds looked like in their rough state, and, since he had already owned a piece of the African continent, to thoroughly explore the property he had before looking elsewhere, all of his wildest dreams would have come true. The thing about this story that so profoundly affected Dr. Conwell, and subsequently millions of others, was the idea that each of us is, at this moment, standing in the middle of his or her own acres of diamonds. If only we will have the wisdom and patience to intelligently and effectively explore the work in which we are now engaged, to explore ourselves, we'll usually find the riches we seek, whether they be financial or intangible, or both. Before we go running off to what we think are greener pastures, let's make sure that our own is not just as green or, perhaps, even greener. It's been said that if the other guy's pasture appears to be greener than ours, it's quite possible that it's getting better care. Besides, while we're looking at other pastures, other people are looking at ours. To my mind, there are few things more pitiful than the person who wastes his life running from one thing to another, forever looking for the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow and never staying with one thing long enough to find it. No matter what your goal may be, perhaps the road to it can be found in the very thing you're now doing. It wasn't until he was completely paralyzed by polio and forced to reach into the rich resources of his mind that a courageous farmer got the idea of producing exceptionally good meat products on his farm. From that idea, one of the country's most successful meatpacking companies was born. His farm contained acres of diamonds, too. He'd just never been forced to dig for them before. Your mind is your richest resource. Let it thoroughly explore the possibilities lurking in what you're presently doing before turning to something new. I say that because there were probably good reasons for your having chosen your present work in the beginning. If there weren't, and if you're unhappy in the field you're in, then perhaps it's time for some serious exploration. Dr. Russell Conwell's life is an example of the importance of a willingness to change once one's own pasture has been thoroughly explored. As I mentioned earlier, Dr. Conwell began as a lawyer, then became a newspaper editor before he finally found his true calling as a clergyman and the founder of a great university. One of the best examples of a person's finding acres of diamonds hiding in his work is the story of Stu Leonard of Norwalk, Connecticut. Stu Leonard began as a dairy route deliveryman. As he worked his rounds, he began to think of all the products connected to the dairy business that his customers really needed. With very little down, he bought a working dairy, and with a lot of hard work, he began to build a business around it. He kept the working dairy intact and the center of his operations, and he surrounded it with windows through which his customers could watch the process. And he began to add other products to his line. Today, his dairy store is the largest in the world, and he sells everything in the food line. People come from all over the area to shop at Stu Leonard's world's largest dairy store. They love it, and he loves them. People who are too old or infirm to come to his store on their own are picked up in Stu Leonard's buses and brought to the store. He has a multi-million-dollar business that grew out of a delivery route. The diamonds were there, and Stu Leonard made the most of them. Every kind of work has such opportunity lurking within it. The opportunities are there now, clamoring to be noticed. But they cannot speak or print signs for us to read. Our part of the bargain is to look at our work with new eyes, with the eyes of creation. Pierre Teilhard de Chardin said, "It is our duty as men and women to proceed as though limits to our abilities do not exist. We are collaborators in creation." A man I knew in Arizona began with a small gas station. One day, he was sitting at his desk and watching through the window while one of his young attendants filled a customer's gas tank. He watched the customer while he stood about, waiting for the job to be finished. It dawned upon him that that man had money in his pockets and that there were things he needed, or wanted, that he would pay for, if they were conveniently displayed where he could see them. So he began selling other items: fishing tackle, then fishing licenses, hunting and camping equipment, rifles, shotguns, ammunition, hunting licenses. He found an excellent line of aluminum fishing boats and trailers. He began buying up the contiguous property around him. Then he added an auto parts department. He had always carried cold soft drinks and candy, but now he added an excellent line of chocolates in a refrigerated case. Before long, he sold more chocolates than anyone else in the state. He carried thousands of things his customers could buy while they waited for their cars to be serviced. All of this guaranteed that most of the gas customers in town would come to his station. He sold more gas. He began cashing checks on Fridays. The bonanza grew and grew. It all started with a man with a human brain, watching a customer who was standing around with money in his pockets and nothing to spend it on. Others would have lived and died with the small service station, and they do. My friend saw the diamonds. Both my friend in Arizona and Stu Leonard in Connecticut are customer-oriented. Serve the customer. Serve the customer better than anyone else is serving the customer. Stu Leonard's company policy is conspicuously displayed in his store for all to read, and it goes like this. Rule 1. The customer is always right. Rule 2. If the customer is ever wrong, reread Rule 1. Upon seeing a wealthy customer drive in, many service station operators might say to themselves, "I ought to be in his business." Not so. There is just as much opportunity in one business as there is in another, if only we will stop playing copycat with each other and begin thinking creatively, begin thinking in new directions. It's there, believe me, and it's our job to find it. Take the time to stand back and look at your work as a stranger might. A stranger might ask, why does he do it that way? Has he noticed how what he's doing might be capitalized upon or multiplied? If you're happy with things as they are, then, by all means, keep them that way. But there's great fun in finding diamonds hiding in ourselves and in our work. We never get bored or blasé, or find ourselves in a rut. A rut, we're reminded, is really nothing more than a grave with the ends kicked out. Some of the most interesting businesses in the world grew out of what was originally a very small idea in a very small area. If something is needed in one town, then the chances are that it's needed also in all towns and cities all over the country. You might ask yourself also, how good am I at what I'm presently doing? Do you know all there is to know about your work? How would your work stand up against the work of others in your line? The educator and author J.B. Matthews wrote, "Unless a person has trained himself for this chance, the chance will only make him ridiculous. A great occasion is worth to a man exactly what his preparation enables him to make of it." I'm sure Dr. Matthews intended to include the female half of the world in that statement. I'm often appalled by how little people know about the business they're in. "That's not my department," they'll say. I suppose if they would see a fire starting in someone else's department, they wouldn't report it. Most real estate people don't sell homes and property. They show homes and property, something a 6-year-old child could do. They often know nothing at all about selling or marketing, yet they call themselves real estate professionals. They're actually tour guides. "This is the living room," they say to intelligent men and women who already know what a living room looks like. Someone, come to think of it, I think it was I, once wrote that the human race is much like a convoy of ships in time of war. The whole fleet is slowed down to protect the slowest ships, and human beings march slowly unmindful of the diamonds beneath their feet. To become diamond miners, the first thing we need to do is to break away from the crowd and quit assuming that because people in the millions are living that way, it must be the best way. It's not the best way, it's the average way. The people going the best way are way out in front. They're so far ahead of the crowd, you can't even see their dust anymore. They're the people who live and work on the leading edge, the cutting edge, and they mark the way for all the rest. You and I have a choice to make, really. It takes imagination, curious imagination, to see diamonds in their rough state as cut and polished gemstones, and to see a pile of iron or as stainless steel. To prospect for your own acres of diamonds, develop a faculty we might call intelligent objectivity. The faculty to stand back and look at your work as a person from Mars might look at it. Within the framework of what industry or profession does your job fall? Do you know all you can know about your industry or profession? Isn't it time for a refreshing change of some kind? How can the customer be given a better break? Each morning, ask yourself, how can I increase my service today? There are rare and very marketable diamonds lurking all around me. Have I been looking for them, examining every facet of my work and of the industry or profession in which it has its life? There are better ways to do what I'm presently doing. What are they? How will my work be performed 20 years from now? Everything in the world is in a state of evolution. How can I do now what will eventually be done anyway? Think of what Stu Leonard did with his dairy route and my friend in Arizona with his small service station, what Famous Amos did with his chocolate chip cookies, and what Procter & Gamble did with soap. Sure, there's risk involved. There's no growth of any kind without risk. We start running risks when we get out of bed in the morning. Risks are good for us. They bring out the best that's in us. They brighten the eye and get the mind cooking. They quicken the step and put a new, shining look on our days. Human beings should never be settled. It's okay for chickens and cows and cats, but it's wrong for human beings. People start to die when they become settled. We need to keep things stirred up. Back in 1931, Lloyd C. Douglas, the world-famous novelist who wrote The Robe, Magnificent Obsession, and other best-selling books, wrote a magazine article titled Escape. In that article, Douglas asked, "Who of us has not at some time toyed briefly with the temptation to run away? If all the people who have given that idea the temporary hospitality of their imagination were to have acted upon it, few would be living at their present address. And of the small minority who did carry the impulse into effect, it is doubtful if many ever disengaged themselves as completely as they had hoped from the problems that hurled them forth. More often than otherwise, it may be surmised, they packed up their troubles in their old kit bags and took them along." The point of the article was, simply, don't try to run away from your troubles. Overcome them. Prevail, right where you are. What we're really after is not escape from our perplexities and frustrations, but a triumph over them. And one of the best ways to accomplish that is to get on course and stay there. Restate and reaffirm your goal. The thing you want most to do, the place in life you want most to reach. See it clearly in your mind's eye, just as you can envision the airport in Los Angeles when you board your plane in New York. Or, like a great ship in a storm, just keep your heading and your engines running. The storm will pass. although sometimes it seems that it never will, and one bright morning, you'll find yourself passing the harbor light. Then you can give a big sigh of relief, rest a while, and almost before you know it, you'll find your eyes turning seaward again. You'll think of a new harbor you'd like to visit, a new voyage upon which to embark, and once again, you'll set out. That's just the way this funny-looking, two-legged, curious, imaginative, tinkering, fiddling dreamer called a human being operates. He escapes from problems not by running away from them, but by overcoming them. And as soon as he overcomes one set of problems, he starts looking around for new and more difficult pickles to get himself into and out of. So if you find yourself looking at travel folders and thinking of running away, go ahead, think about it. It will get your mind off things for a while. Then zero in on your goal. We'll talk more about that later in this program. And get busy. Take one thing at a time, and before you know it, you'll start seeing those diamonds scattered all over your world, and you'll be out in the clear again. If you feel like running away from it all once in a while, you're perfectly normal. If you stay and get rid of your problems by working your way through them, you're a successful citizen. Start taking an hour a day with a legal pad and pen to dissect your work. Take it apart and look at its constituent parts. There's opportunity there. That's your acre of diamonds. A worthy destination. The stories of people achieving unusual success, despite all manner of handicaps, never fail to capture our attention. They're inspirational, to be sure. But if we study them closely, we find they're much more than that. The boy whose legs were terribly burned and who was told he'd be lucky to walk again becomes a champion track star. The woman who was blind and deaf from early childhood becomes one of the most inspirational figures of the century. And the poor children who rise to fame and fortune have nearly become commonplace. In this age of unprecedented immigration, we read and see on television examples of people who arrived in this country without any money and without knowing a word of English and who, within a surprisingly short time, have become wonderfully successful. In fact, the typical Korean family that has immigrated to the United States during the past 20 years has a higher average income than the average American family that was born and went to school here. How does that happen? Freedom, personal liberty, is the most precious thing on earth. It's also one of the rarest hints. Its great value. People who manage to get to America, despite mountainous problems and miles of red tape, often find themselves free for the first time in their lives. It's a joyous, wonderful experience for them, and in this newfound freedom, they set to work to find a place for themselves. They go to work serving their new country and its people. Time means nothing to them, but being free to pursue their own ends in the richest, freest country on the planet is everything. They all go to work, and they work hard. Their work is excellent, first class, as good as they can do it, and it's priced fairly. You don't see them marching, demanding higher pay or shorter hours. All they want is the opportunity, and once it's theirs, they make the most of it. In New York City, a Korean family managed to buy a small convenience grocery store in Midtown Manhattan. The first thing they did was clean it. The store sparkled with cleanliness. Then they stocked it with all the grocery items they felt the people in their area wanted. They were open early in the morning. They stayed open late at night. They never failed to give a friendly greeting to their customers. Naturally, they became wonderfully successful. What would wonderfully satisfy one family and represent complete success for them would be considered failure by another family, all because of their different aspirations, their different plateaus in life, the differences in their lifestyles, upbringings, educations. When we're youngsters, every facet of our environment has an effect upon us and helps to set our course in life. The youngster who knew poverty as a child might aspire to be rich. He might overcompensate because of the desolation of his youth, while another young person, who was raised in an upper-middle-class family and who always had just about everything he wanted, might settle for a very middle-class adulthood. Things we've always had aren't as important to us as they are to those who have been without them. On the preceding message, we talked about freedom and about how dear it is to those who never had it, while most Americans take it for granted and never even think about it. If you asked most Americans what the most important thing in the world is for a human being, chances are they would seldom come up with freedom, the freedom to set their own goals in life. Yet, as Archibald MacLeish wrote in his fine Play The Secret of Freedom, the secret of happiness is freedom, and the secret of freedom, courage. To understand the subject and the importance of goal setting, we have to realize that it is the very basis of any success. It is, in fact, the very definition of success. The best definition of success I've ever found goes like this. Success is the progressive realization of a worthy goal, or, in some cases, the pursuit of a worthy ideal. If you'll give this definition some thought, I think you'll agree with me. Success is the progressive realization of a worthy goal. That's a beautiful definition of success. It means that anyone who's on course toward the fulfillment of a goal is successful now. Success does not lie in the achievement of a goal, although that's what the world considers success. It lies in the journey toward the goal. We're successful as long as we're working towards something we want to bring about in our lives. That's when the human being is at his best. That's what Cervantes meant when he wrote, "The road is better than the inn." Quite often, romantic stories end with the loving couple getting married. That's just the beginning of the story. When the young person stands before his school's president or principal and receives the diploma, that's called commencement. That's the beginning. It's an important milestone, to be sure, and congratulations are certainly in order. But where is he going from there? Once a person has realized the goal for which he has so assiduously toiled, that's wonderful. It's time for a rest and some self-congratulations, time to savor the achievement. But by my definition, we're no longer successful until we set a new, higher goal toward which to work. We're at our best when we're climbing, thinking, planning, working, when we're on the road to something we want to bring about. By this, I don't mean that we should become workaholics, far from it. In fact, it's been well established that the most successful men and women manage to live in a wonderful state of balance. They have lots of recreation, and they get lots of rest. The mind works best when we're properly rested, and the mind is the best and most important part of us, regardless of what we choose to do. Have you heard an athlete say, "It's about 90% mental"? Whatever the percentage really is in a good game of golf or tennis, it's very large. As we pointed out in The Magic Word, our mental attitude can make all the difference between winning and losing. With our definition of success as the progressive realization of a worthy goal, we cover all the bases. The young person working to finish school is as successful as any person on earth. The person working toward a particular position with his company is just as successful. If you have a goal that you find worthy of you as a person, a goal that fills you with joy at the thought of it, believe me, you'll reach it. But as you draw near and see that the goal will soon be achieved, begin to think ahead to the next goal you're going to set. It often happens that halfway through a book, a writer will hit upon the idea for his next one and begin making notes, or come up with ideas for a title, even while he's finishing work on the book in progress. That's the way it should be. One of my favorite poems is by Rabindranath Tagore, the distinguished poet from Calcutta, India, and it goes like this. I slept and dreamt. That life was joy. I woke and saw. That life was duty. I acted, and behold, duty was joy. We are at our very best, and we are happiest when we are fully engaged in work we enjoy on the journey toward the goal we've established for ourselves. It gives meaning to our time off and comfort to our sleep. It makes everything else in life so wonderful, so worthwhile. When they think of the word success, most people tend to equate it with lots of money. Sometimes that's a natural byproduct of the goal, and it tells us how well we're doing. but not always by any means. Success is whatever we want it to be that's worthy of us. That's why I commented earlier that success may also be defined as the pursuit of a worthy ideal. For example, I can't imagine anyone more successful than an outstanding teacher who is striving to know more about the art of teaching and the subject matter that will catch the interest of his pupils, who understands that every student is different and learns at a different speed. Joy and satisfaction come to us from serving others, and there are literally millions of ways of doing that. For those whose goals involve the serving of great numbers of people, chances are they will be richly rewarded, indeed. In fact, for many, a goal is a certain level of income or a certain amount of money in an investment account. A goal is an individual thing, as individual as the person himself. Since no two people are exactly alike, it stands to reason that no two of us will have exactly the same goals. One thing a goal must do, however, is fill us with positive emotion when we think about it. It must be something we want very much to bring about. The more intensely we feel about an idea or a goal, the more assuredly the idea, buried deep in our subconscious, will direct us along the path to its fulfillment. I once used the quotation, "No one gets rich without enriching others." I received a letter from a man in Utah who wrote, "How about those who get rich in the drug trade? Or those who produce and sell pornography? How do they enrich others?" It was a good question, especially in these times. I wrote back to him and told him that my definition of success is the progressive realization of a worthy goal. Certainly, people in the drug and pornography business would not qualify as successful. What they're doing is counterproductive, destructive, and in the case of drugs, it involves the enslavement and death of thousands. I went on to say that while our needs are few and relatively simple, our wants, in this incredibly affluent society, are virtually endless. By meeting those wants, whatever they may be, we serve others, but not always to their benefit or to our own. I wouldn't call those in drugs and pornography successful, and their riches won't amount to much if they're apprehended and sent to prison. But I did not stop using the quotation. It's possible to get rich without enriching others, but for most of us, it's not the way we want to go. It's nothing to take pride in. Why bother when there are so many positive, excellent, and productive ways to serve others? But whatever our goal happens to be, if we stay with it, if we're fully committed to it, we will reach it. That's the way it works. It's estimated that about 5% of the population achieves unusual success. For the rest, averages seem to be good enough. Most seem to just drift along, taking circumstances as they come, and perhaps hoping from time to time that things will get better. I like to compare human beings to ships, as Carlyle used to do. It's estimated that about 95% can be compared to ships without rudders. Subject to every shift of wind and tide, they're helplessly adrift. And while they fondly hope that they will one day drift into some rich and bustling port, you and I know that for every narrow harbor entrance, there are 1,000 miles of rocky coastline. The chances of their drifting into port are 1,000 to 1 against them. Our state lotteries wax rich on such people. So do the slot machines in Las Vegas and Atlantic City. These people look to luck, but they don't seem to realize how steeply the odds are stacked against them. Someone wins from time to time, to be sure, but the odds are still there. But the 5% who have taken the time and exercised the discipline to climb into the driver's seat of their lives, who have decided upon a challenging goal to reach and fully committed themselves to reaching it, sail straight and far across the deep oceans of life, reaching one port after another and accomplishing more in just a few years than the rest accomplish in a lifetime. If you should visit a ship in port and ask the captain for his next port of call, he'll tell you in a single sentence. Even though the captain cannot see his port, his destination, for fully 99% of the voyage, he knows that it's there, and that barring an unforeseen and highly unlikely catastrophe, he'll reach it. All he has to do is keep doing certain things every day. If someone asked you for your next port of call, your current goal, could you tell him? Is your goal clear and concise in your mind? Have you written it down? It's a good idea. We need reminding, reinforcement. If you can get a picture of your goal and stick it to your bathroom mirror, it's an excellent idea to do so. Thousands of successful people write down their goal on a card and carry it in their wallet or purse. When we ask people what they're working for, chances are they'll answer in vague generalities. They might say good health or happiness or lots of money. That's not good. Good health should be a universal goal. We all want that and do our best to achieve and maintain it. Happiness is a byproduct of something else, and lots of money is much too vague. It might work, but I think it's better to choose a particular sum of money. The better, the more clearly our goal is defined, the more real it becomes to us, and before long, the more attainable. Happiness comes from the direction in which we're moving. For example, children are happier on Christmas morning before they open their presents than they are on Christmas afternoon. No matter how wonderful their presents may be, the anticipation is over. They will enjoy their gifts, to be sure, but we often find them querulous and irritable on Christmas afternoon. We are happier on our way out to dinner than we are on the way home. We are happier preparing to leave on vacation than we are coming home from it. And believe it or not, we are happier moving toward our goals than we are after they've been accomplished. That's why it's so important to set a new goal as soon as the current one is realized. And we should never stop this process. All the days of our lives, we should be engaged in moving toward, earning and looking forward to a new plateau on which to stand, a new goal to accomplish. If you, like so many millions of Americans, don't know what it is you want sufficiently to name as your primary goal, I recommend you make out a you want list. Take a notepad, go off by yourself, and write down the things you would really like to have or to do. Your list might include a beautiful new home, or a trip around the world, or a visit to some special country or place. You might be yearning for a sailboat or a motor yacht. Or, if you're an avid fisherman, you might want to go salmon fishing in Alaska or trout fishing in New Zealand. It might be a business of your own, or a particular position with your company. It might be a certain income that will permit you to live in the way you would like to live, or, as I said earlier, a certain amount of money in good investments or in a savings account. How about a special make of car, or an addition to your present home? Just write down everything you can think of that you would really like to see come about in your life. Then, when you've exhausted your wants, go over the list again and number the items in their order of importance. Then, make number 1 your present goal. Listen to this message often, as I hope you will listen to all the messages in this program, until the suggestions become a habit-knit way of thinking and doing things. Believe me, the system works. It works every time. Life plays no favorites. Anyone can succeed, and millions do. So can you. Of one thing you can be sure, you will become what you think about. If your thinking is circular and chaotic, your life will reflect that chaos. But if your thinking is orderly and clear, if you have a goal that is important for you to reach, then reach it you will. One goal at a time. That's important. That's where most people unwittingly make their mistake. They don't concentrate on a single goal long enough to reach it before they're off on another track, then another, with the result that they achieve nothing but confusion, and make excuses. I started looking for the so-called secret of success when I was 12 years old. I read every book I could find on the subject. I studied psychology and sociology. I studied the great religions of the world. I read the world's greatest philosophers. All of a sudden, many years later, I realized that in the hundreds of lives I'd studied, in the countless books I'd read, a plain and simple truth had kept appearing. It is believed that no one can learn anything until he is ready for it. Apparently, I was finally ready, in my late 20s, to see for the first time the secret I had searched for so long. It was simply this: we become what we think about. You see, you are, at this moment, the living embodiment of the sum total of your thoughts to this point in your life. You can be nothing else. Similarly, 5 years from now, you will be the sum total of your thoughts to that point in time. But you can control your thoughts. You can decide upon what you wish to concentrate, upon what you think about from this point forward. And you will become that. You will realize that goal as sure as anything on earth can be sure. That's why having a goal toward which to work is so very important. It gives our minds a focus and our lives a direction. By thinking every morning, every night, and as many times during the day as we can, about the single goal we've established for ourselves, we actually begin moving toward it and bringing it toward us. When we concentrate our thinking, it's like taking a river that's twisting and turning and meandering all over the countryside and putting it into a straight, smooth channel. Now it has power, direction, economy, speed. Billions of human beings would give anything they have to enjoy the freedom and personal liberty you and I take for granted. To have the right to choose their work and their goals, to enjoy our bountiful standard of living and our educational system, to know the peace and privacy of our homes, and to have laws that protect the citizen rather than persecute him. We have it all. Yet, in the midst of our plenty, millions lead unhappy, aimless lives. They live in tiny prisons of their own fashioning. These are the people who don't know that each one of us, not the economy or fate or luck or the breaks, is in charge of his life. Each one of us is completely responsible. As Carlyle put it, the person without a purpose is like a ship without a rudder. Have a purpose in life, and having it, throw such strength of mind and muscle into your work as God has given you. He also said, a person with a half volition goes backward and forward, and makes no way on the smoothest road. But the person with a whole volition advance on the roughest, and will reach his purpose, if there be even a little wisdom in it. Munger said, there is no road to success but through a clear, strong purpose. Nothing can take its place. A purpose underlies character, culture, position, attainment of every sort. So decide upon your goal. Insist upon it. Look at your goal card every morning and night and as many times during the day as you conveniently can. By so doing, you will insinuate your goal into your subconscious mind. See yourself as having already attained your goal. Do that every day without fail, and it will become a habit before you realize it. A habit that will take you from one success to another all the years of your life.